Okay, once again, good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today is the third installment of our series, A City Employee's Guide to Student Loan Forgiveness. We have a lot of great information to cover today on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, otherwise known as PSLF, and the time-limited PSLF waiver. If you missed parts 1 and 2, you can catch up on those by visiting WorkWell NYC's YouTube and Vimeo channels. And of course, today's session will also be recorded, and we will be sharing the webinar recording and the slides with you all afterwards. Just a few housekeeping notes for today. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button to submit those questions. We like to keep the chat reserved for any comments or reactions, but if you put your question in the Q&A, we'll be able to find it more easily. And lastly, just as a friendly reminder, we only have about an hour for today's session. So unfortunately, we will not be able to get to every single question today. For this webinar, we'll mainly providing some general guidance, but we will be sharing resources if you have any specific inquiries that are unique to your circumstances at the end of this presentation. And so today's webinar is brought to you by WorkWell NYC. WorkWell NYC is the worksite wellness program for City of New York employees, and we operate in 5 key program areas. We have Move More, which focuses on physical activity. We have Eat Well, which targets healthy eating and nutrition. We have Take Action, that emphasizes primary care and prevention. We have Be Well, which focuses on mental well-being and resilience. And lastly, we have Project Build, which stands for Building Understanding, Inclusion, Learning, and Diversity. And so we know that financial wellness is something that really impacts mental health. And so for that reason, we are really excited to talk about student loan relief, PSLF, et cetera. And so we're very excited for you to be here with us today. And I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Anna Tan, and I am a program coordinator with WorkWell NYC at the Office of Labor Relations. And I'm very excited to be joined by my colleagues. We have Heidi Capusora, Director of Policy and Research at the Office of Financial Empowerment at the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. We also have Deneen Osby, Assistant Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Office of Financial Empowerment, also at the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. And last but not least, we have Ben Kuhn, Policy Analyst, again with OFE at the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. And with that, I will turn it over to Heidi.
Thank you, Anna, for that introduction and WorkWell's partnership, along with our presenters today from NILAG Student Borrower Protection Center and ECS. I'm from the Office of Financial Empowerment, and our mission is to educate, empower, and protect New Yorkers and neighborhoods with low income so they can build assets and make the most of their financial resources. And to that end, we also want to thank City Hall and DCWP Commissioner Mayuga for their commitment to bringing PSLF awareness to city employees through citywide emails, videos, and webinars. Now, as Anna mentioned, I want to direct attendees to the Q&A for your questions, and you will have questions. In a webinar this spring, we had more than 400 from the audience. So we will have more questions than capacity to answer them, but we will prioritize those that are generally applicable. The truth is 99% of the questions will be for your own unique situation. And so for that, we want to encourage you to see a financial counselor at a financial empowerment center. And I am just sending around the link here. Next slide, please. So although today's topic is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, we want to take a moment and update you on President Biden's student loan cancellation news, which was announced in August, including canceling up to $10,000 for qualifying borrowers, subject to income caps, $125,000 for individuals and $250,000 for married couples or households, canceling up to $20,000 for borrowers who were recipients of Pell Grants, and extending the pause on student loan repayments through December 31, 2022. We expect the application for cancellation to be available on the internet in early to mid-October. We also encourage you to apply before November 15 so that you can receive relief before the pause expires on 12/31. Now, the situation is evolving, so we strongly suggest that you sign up for news at the Department of Ed's website. And I think the colleague is going to go ahead and post that link. So, next slide. So what is PSLF? It's a program that forgives the remaining amount of federal student loans after an eligible borrower has made 120 qualifying monthly payments. So what does that mean for you? First, the PSLF is designed for you, public service employees, to help you manage your federal direct student loans. And if you zoom out for a second, whenever you take out a loan, you expect to pay it over a term. It could be 4 payments, it could be 200 payments, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. For many of you, too many of you, the term loan feels literally like forever. Now, student loans are treated differently. The federal government created this special program to thank you and the millions of government employees, soldiers, and 501c3 employees in this country. And it allows eligible public service employees to make 120 payments, and then that's it, you're done. And whatever is left is forgiven. So in this slide, we go over some of the eligibility. So to qualify, you must be employed by a U.S. federal, state, local, or tribal government or not-for-profit organization. And that includes U.S. military service and all 501c3 nonprofit organizations. You must work full-time for that organization. You have direct loans or consolidate other federal student loans into direct loan. You're paying those loans under an income-driven repayment plan, and you must make 120 qualifying payments. Next slide. So if the program is so great, what's the waiver? Well, for various reasons, it wasn't working as well as it should have. So last October, the federal government went a step further, and for a limited time, more public service borrowers could include more payments that were otherwise ineligible. So in that race to 120, you could be closer than you think, but only if you complete the help tool by October 31st. Next slide. So really love the graphics. Halloween is an easy way to remember the deadline. And it is only 5 weeks away at this point. So here is what the waiver practically does. If you're in forbearance of 12 consecutive months or greater, or 36 cumulative months or greater, it will count under the waiver. The months that were spent in deferment before 2013 will also count under the waiver. Here's what it doesn't do. Periods of default and in-school deferment still do not qualify, and the qualifying full-time employment requirement has not changed. Next slide. So who should use the waiver? You've worked for a qualifying public service employer for any period of time since October of 2007, even if your loans predate 2007. You have never certified for employment. You have paid loans and are not on an IDR. You have made qualifying payments, then consolidated loans prior to October 6, 2021, before the waiver. You've spent time in forbearance or deferment, and if you are a service member with active duty service. My colleague Ben is going to walk you through the PSLF help tool in a minute, but as a quick preview, the form takes less than 30 minutes, but you must complete it in a single session, so there's no saving of drafts midway in the process. You will need tax information, including your employer's EIN, employer identification number, and address. You will need your employers to certify the forms to qualify. So before we jump into the help tool walkthrough, remember, Only direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized, direct plus, or direct consolidation loans qualify for PSLF. You have to consolidate your loans into a direct loan. You have to collect your past employment information. You have to complete the PSLF waiver, have your past employer sign your PSLF waiver certifying your employment, and you must mail, preferably certified mail, the form in by October 31. With that, I'm sending it over to my colleague, Ben.
Thanks, Haiti. That was excellent. So now I'm going to go over step by step how to use the PSLF help tool. So as Haiti mentioned, the PSLF help tool is really just the best way to fill out the PSLF form. So once you know that you have direct loans, you have your employer's address, and you know that your employment history, you're ready to use the PSLF help tool. So next slide, please. So you can find the PSLF help tool by simply Googling PSLF help tool, or you can go to the Department of Education's website and find the PSLF help tool from there. So a few pro tips. So first, you have to have a studentaid.gov account. So if you don't, you'll need to create one before using the help tool. Like I said, you need to have your employment history ready. So you'll have to fill out your start and your end date if applicable, or if you're still working on it, there's a box to check that that's your current employer. If you are unsure of your employment dates, you can use your employment verification letter and the employee self-service to help with that information if you're a city employee. And when you enter the city of New York, so everyone here is a city employee, you can use the same address for every agency. So it's the address listed here. And then the same goes for the employer identification number, which you also need for the help tool. And that number is listed in a couple of slides later in this presentation, and we'll make sure to send around this PowerPoint to everyone following the presentation. And lastly, you just need to complete that PSLF help tool by October 31st. So if you complete the help tool, you'll get the PSLF form, as I'll go over in future slides. And then once you have that, you can get it signed by your employer after October 31st. If you want to manually fill out the form, so basically you didn't use the help tool and instead choose to fill out the form yourself, you'll need to get the employer's signature by October 31st. So we would really strongly recommend using the PSLF help tool. Next slide, please. So once you begin the PSLF help tool, you'll get to a screen like this. So if you're a city employee, this is the number you'll insert. It's the employer identification number. If you are entering it for a previous employer, then you would find that information on your W-2. Then you'd put your employer start date and employer end date. I'm assuming most of you all are current city employees, so you just have to click, this is my current employer, and then also insert your start date. Next slide, please. And if you are an employee of City of New York, you're qualifying your employment for New York, you just need to click the City of New York. There's also going to be a button for the City of New York all employees. We recommend clicking this one, but we haven't heard of any horrible cases of people clicking all employees, and that should work too. So don't be discouraged by that. Next slide. So for the City of New York, that's all you have to do. It'll print out a PSLF, or it'll give you a PDF of a PSLF form that you can print out or send to the right city official. Deneen will go over who's the right person to go to in a few slides. But right now, I'm going to go over some cases if you're not a city employee. So right here, if you are a federal employee or maybe worked at a different government, you might have to scroll through and pick your agency. You don't have to do that for the City of New York, but we know that for the federal government, if you would have to choose the specific agency you worked at. So for instance, you could click the Department of Education if you worked there, and you just have to flip through a few pages of agencies. Next slide, please. So there may be some cases where you worked at a really small nonprofit you worked at a small government where no one has actually used the PSLF help tool. For the vast majority of people, your organization will already show up on the help tool, but it is possible that it won't. If this is the case, you'll just have to manually enter the employer and provide a little bit of information and just follow the instructions on the help tool. Next slide. For some, we would basically say, if you don't quite know if your employer qualifies for PSLF, you should go ahead and try on the help tool to see if it's eligible. But you might find if you worked for a for-profit company or certain nonprofits, they may not actually be eligible for PSLF. So the PSLF help tool will tell you that. The example we have here is McDonald's, obviously a for-profit company, so that's not going to be eligible. But it may be that it's more borderline and you believe that your employer should be eligible. And so if that's the case, then you are able to submit documentation explaining why you believe your employer qualifies, and you can go from there. But again, for the vast majority of you all, you won't run into this problem. Next slide. So after you complete the PSLF help tool, it'll provide you the PSLF form, which, as we've discussed, you just need to get signed by your employer and send in. And that is the end. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, just need to fill out the form. It should be auto-populated from the help tool, and then your employer signs it on page 2, and then you send it in. Next slide. And so I'm going to kick it to Deneen, who's going to give more information for city employees about who to go to for certification and other key details. So Deneen, I'll pass it to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. And thank you for walking us through the help tool. Next slide, please. Oh, just a quick reminder to attendees that Amy and Katie are in the Q&A and are answering all of your fabulous questions. So please remember to put your questions in the Q&A. Okay, so on this screen here, we've talked a lot about the PSLF help tool and completing the form. So the PSLF help tool will ask for the employee identification number. Now that's not your social security number, it's the employee identification number that is located on your W-2. So the employee identification number for New York City employees is 136-400-434. Now this number is the same across the board for city employees. So if you work for Department of Education at DOE, or if you work for Department of Citywide Administration Services at DCAS, you all have the same employee identification number. Now, the next bullet that we see there is that all current municipal employees should go to the agency's HR team for certification. And the Human Resource Department have done a tremendous job in simplifying this process for employees. Previously, an employee would need to go to each agency that they work for to get the form certified. But now it's a one-stop shop, and current employees would just go to their current HR department and they'll complete the certification. Now, any former or currently not employed by the City of New York employees, we also have simplified the process for them as well. They would simply email their completed certification form to DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, at askcst, that's askcst@dcas.nyc.gov, and DCAS will handle those certification forms as well. Next slide, please. Okay. Now we recognize that there are employees who may not have worked continuously at one city agency. They may have, for example, started off as a college aide in one agency and then maybe transferred or got promoted and went to another city agency. So employees that have worked without a break in city employment, that's continuous city service, they would only complete one certification form for verification of that continuous employment. But let's say there's an employee that had a break in service. Perhaps they worked at, let's say, Department of Education for a period of time. They left, took some time off, maybe went to another place of employment, and then returned for city service. So employees that have a break in service, they would need to complete a separate form for each period in which they left city employment and were later employed. So the employee's current HR department or DCAS can sign that certification form. And on the screen, once again, it gives the email address for DCAS, askcst@dcas.nyc.gov. Next slide, please. Now, we've also simplified, DOE has also simplified the process of certification for DOE employees. So on the screen, you see there, we have instructions for DOE employees. So first and foremost, DOE employees would be familiar with the HR Connect, the online web portal. So they would consult HR Connect for specific instructions about securing signatures as well as employment verification. So there's also separate instructions for DOE school-based staff and central staff. So current DOE school-based staff would contact their principal or designee to complete the certification form. Central staff or administrative staff would contact the HR director or the operations point person to complete the form. And any former DOE employees who worked in the schools, they can use the Find a School tool that's on a DOE website to find the contact information for the last school in which they worked. Next slide, please. Now, let's say a DOE employee does not remember the last school in which they worked, or if they're a non-school-based staff, then they can simply send an email to HR Connect at hrconnect@schools.nyc.gov, and they'll be able to provide assistance. Next slide, please. So what have we learned? I know we've covered a lot, so we just want to provide you with a few important takeaways before you leave us today. So first, as was discussed earlier in the presentation, to be eligible for the PSLF program, you would need to be employed by U.S., federal, state, local, or tribal government or not-for-profit organization, a 501c organization, and that includes U.S. military service. Now, the great thing is that as a City of New York employee, you've already met that first requirement because you work for a city agency. So next, Human Resources has simplified the employment certification process for employees. So as we mentioned, current municipal employees will go to their agency's HR team. And former or not currently employed employees would email DCAS at askcst@dcas.nyc.gov. And DOE employees, please feel free to use the HR Connect portal for instructions as well. So this really has been a simplified process because we really want to get as many employees that are eligible to complete the PSLF help tool and certify the employment. And as I mentioned, HR departments have done a tremendous job in certifying this process for employees. So very lastly, that last bullet, the next bullet there, the PSLF waiver is not automatic. You do have to take action. So we encourage everyone to complete the PSLF help tool by October 31st, 2022. That's Halloween, and that's really not a long time period away. It's only 40 days away. So please, we encourage you to complete the help tool, which takes less than 30 minutes to complete, and it's your best first step in order to apply for loan forgiveness. Thank you. Next slide, please. So there's help that's as well. You know, this can be a difficult process to navigate, and we recognize that. So DCWP runs the New York City Financial Empowerment Centers, and at the Financial Empowerment Centers, you can get free one-on-one professional financial counseling and coaching, either in person or by the phone. And our counselors are there and they can help with PSLF related questions, as well as various other topics such as creating a budget and saving for college. So to make an appointment, you can visit nyc.gov/talkmoney, or you can call 311 and say financial counseling. Next slide, please. So on this slide here, we have a PSLF testimonial, and this was courtesy of a client that visited the Financial Empowerment Center. So their testimonial is really fantastic. My world is completely different now, knowing that I do not have this burden to carry anymore. If I had not spoken with a financial empowerment center counselor, none of this would have happened. Because you knew about my financial situation, my pre-existing student loan debt, and the years of public service I had worked, I am now officially free of student debt. That is over $270,000. That's no longer weighing on me and my life's decisions. So this is an incredible story. And it speaks to the success of an individual who has completed the PSLF help tool, and there are many other success stories as well. So next, I will turn it over to Damaris from ACS, and who will continue with the presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Damaris Rosario, a New York City employee with the Administration for Children's Services for over 18 years. I am happy to be able to partake in this today and confirm for you my recent student loan forgiveness. I myself owed a total of about $135,000 between undergraduate and graduate school costs, but recently had the remaining balance of approximately $68,000 in student debt totally forgiven and wiped away. So like many, I did hear about this waiver that was coming into effect from last October, but would only be available until this October. And it would affect the public service loan forgiveness program. So I really wanted to get more information about how this would now qualify me for public service loan forgiveness. So I began with attending this PSLF webinar in the spring, and it really helped to inform me that I would probably qualify for this, and I needed to get on the studentaid.gov website and look into my past payments and work on consolidating my specific loans. After the webinar, I made sure I logged in, established my account, which had been previously used many years ago. I reviewed my information, and then I made an appointment also with a New York City Financial Empowerment Center counselor. So if I had additional questions throughout the process, I would have that support available. So shortly after the webinar, I began the loan consolidation process of my federal family education loans, the FFEL loans, which were being serviced through Navient and Sallie Mae in previous years. So by consolidating them and starting the process, I was then able to submit the PSLF waiver. And within 3 months' time, the entire process of applying for the public service loan forgiveness program was complete. So I began the process in April, and for me, it was resolved by July with no longer having a student loan payment to make ever again. So my best advice today is to take the time to at least look into it and get the waiver completed as soon as possible. There is a time limit to it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Damaris, for sharing that wonderful testimonial. It's a very inspiring story, and I hope for many of you who are with us for the webinar today, it helps to spark some motivation to log on and go through the PSLF help tool. All right, so before we jump into some additional resources, we do have some time for Q&A. So we are joined by our experts, Amy Zulata from the Student Borrower Protection Center, and Katie Crumpter, one of the counselors at the Financial Empowerment Centers. And they are here to answer the many questions that you all have today. And so again, just as a friendly reminder, if you have any further questions, please use the Q&A button. And again, we will be sharing the slides and the webinar recording with you all afterwards. Amy and Katie, I'll leave it to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Go.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Salata. I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center. It's great to be here with you all. I'll pass it to Katie.
Sorry, I'm Katie Crumpter, and I am a financial counselor with NILAG. And I work for one of the projects I work on is Financial Empowerment Center. If you would like any financial counseling, you can call, or if you have questions on how to deal with your PSLF applications, you can call 311 and just ask for financial counseling. I also just wanted to mention, we're going to open it up for like full on Q&A, but I've seen a lot of similar questions in the chat, and I just wanted to sort of quickly address those. So the first thing is, as far as people have been applying and they've applied like in August or July or even like in the past week or so, and they're looking for a response and they're concerned, I would say, don't worry, as long as you've submitted your application. And Amy, correct me if I'm wrong here, if you have something else. As long as you've submitted your application, trust in the process. You're going to receive bunches of letters from Mohella, possibly from AidVantage. It usually takes at least 3 months to get the correct count for your public service loan forgiveness number. So if you've received letters and you're somewhere within that 3 months and there are different numbers on them, don't worry yet. Like, wait until they've gone through the process. There's a multi-step process that they're reviewing your payments for. I think that's like the biggest question. There's also in the chat, there is in the Q&A, there a lot of people ask for like part 1 and part 2. That's on the Workwell site. There's a link in the Q&A that you can find the previous parts, and this will eventually be posted there as well. And now I just want to open it up, or if Amy wanted to say anything that she saw in the chat.
No, I think that's great. Those are really good reminders, and yeah, let's dive into it.
Great.
All right. So do you think we should, Amy, you think we should just start taking some of these questions out of the Q&A?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
I think Ben was, yeah.
Yeah, I pulled together.
Ben, you do for it.
Yeah, I pulled together some common questions from the Q&A. Just as a reminder to everyone, we're not going to get to every question, and some are hyper personal and might be better suited for one-on-one counseling. But with that being said, we're going to answer some general questions, and hopefully this will capture most of them. So one question we had: should you apply for the PSLF under the waiver if you expect that all of your loans will be forgiven by the Biden relief plan?
This is a good question. There's not a straight answer. I want to mention here that you can apply for both programs. They're separate things and they require separate applications and separate processes. So it is possible to do both. If you are maybe 100% certain that all of your loans will be forgiven under the Biden announcement that, on debt relief, maybe you don't have to apply for PSLF, but if there's any doubt that you might not receive that debt relief, like if you're over the income threshold or if you have more loans than will be forgiven, then it might be a good idea to apply for both.
Thanks. So another one, can you speak a little bit more about getting a refund for payments made during the pause, such as would you recommend asking for a refund if you expect PSLF forgiveness, and how would you go about getting a refund?
I'm going to talk about this because I had a lot of clients, especially who were continuing to make payments, and then the waiver happened and they realized that that PSLF was something that they were actually going to receive. So you can just literally call your servicer. If you have direct loans, if your loans were direct before COVID started, you were eligible for the pause the entire time. So you just call your servicer and say, I would like every payment that I made that I didn't have to make refunded, and they'll send it back to you. Some servicer are sending them back, like literally you get the number of payments that you made back individually, but however they do it, they should send it back and it should happen pretty quickly. I would say if your loan balances will be fully forgiven by the Biden administration thing, if they're like if they are below the 10,000 with all those refunds, I would say you should do it. If you're definitely going to get PSLF, like if you already have 120 months, you should do it. For a fact you already have 120 months and you don't have any forbearances or anything in there. Even if you've been working for 120 months in public service, you may not have 120 months of qualifying payment months. There could be lots of forbearances. People are generally not fully aware of how many forbearances they had. So I would say if you know for a fact you have 120 payments and you don't have to make any more payments, starting in January, ask for refunds. And if it's within the 10 or 20,000 that you're going to be eligible to get forgiven, ask for that refunded. Amy, do you want to say anything else there? I don't know if there's anything you want.
Just like a blanket statement that, if you've made any voluntary payments since March 13th of 2020, you can request a refund. And like Katie said, you just call your servicer and ask for a refund on those payments. And so, yeah.
I guess as a follow-up, even if you paid off all of your payments during the payment pause, so you basically completed your student loans, your loan balance is 0, can you still get a refund and then benefit from PSLF?
Yes.
Good. So another question, is there a maximum income guideline for PSLF?
No, but your income is going to dictate your the amount of payment that you make. So everybody has to be on an IDR for public service loan forgiveness. And so some of those payments, you're not going to have to pay more than a standard 10-year payment amount, but your income is what's going to drive your payment. So there's no maximum amount of income that you can make, unlike the Biden forgiveness, you make whatever, but it will impact your payment plan.
Thanks. And another question I saw, so if you, after the PSLF waiver period, let's say you applied for PSLF waiver, you got it, after, if you still have payments to make, do you need to take any action as far as getting on an income-driven repayment plan or fulfilling any other guidelines of PSLF?
So after October 31st, the regular program requirements will be in effect. And those program requirements are essentially that you have to have a direct loan, you have to be in the right repayment plan, which is generally, for most people, an income-driven repayment plan, as Katie mentioned. You have to be employed by in a public service employment. And then you also have to make 120 payments on those loans. So if you don't make enough, if you don't get enough credit from the waiver under the waiver period, you can still continue accruing credits after the waiver period ends, but those requirements will go back into effect. So if you're not on an income-driven repayment plan, or if you don't have a direct loan right now, that's why you would need to consolidate, get on an income-driven repayment plan, because those regular program requirements will be in effect after that waiver deadline.
Thanks. And another question I saw, I know it's a lot of questions. If you took out a loan for your child, can that count towards PSLF?
Not really. I mean, maybe. If you have loans that you have taken out for your own education. So if you have loans for your own education and you have Parent Plus loans, you can consolidate those Parent Plus loans into your direct loans. If you do not, like, into your own education loans. If you don't have any of your own education loans, then no, Parent Plus loans, if that's all you have, they are not eligible for public service loan forgiveness.
And that's true under the waiver period. Parent Plus loans generally qualify for public service loan forgiveness program in general, because they are direct loans. But so this means that if you don't have loans, like Katie mentioned, for your own education and also for your children's education right now, and you can't consolidate them into one, that is the only way to do it under the waiver. But you could accrue future credit for, you could work for the next 10 years and, apply for PSLF and get it, for future credit. So they are technically eligible for PSLF. They just don't fall under the waiver.
Great. Maybe another one. So if you qualified your employment for the pandemic and you're still at the same job, so you're a city employee, you took all the right steps, you qualified your employment, everything went well, do you need to take any more action during the waiver period, or are you good to go?
I'm sorry, so you've been qualifying your employment annually and you've already qualified every employment then? Is that the case situation? Yeah, then no. If you've already submitted all of your public service loan forgiveness and you have all of your employment has been qualified and you've done that, keep in mind, there is no assumption of ongoing public service work. So if you've qualified work and the last time you submitted a form was a year ago, they have no idea that you're continuing to work there. You'd have to submit another form for this past year to say that you've worked this year. That's why we encourage people to do it every year so that their payments are updated, annually, as opposed to once in 10 years. So I would say the short answer is no, they don't really have to do anything. But the longer answer is, well, you have to make sure all of your employment has been qualified.
Thanks. And I'll go ahead and actually answer a question I saw a few times. So is it the same address for all New York City employees? Yes. And is it the same employer identification number for all city employees? Yes. So we're going to send around the presentation, I believe multiple times in the presentation, both the address and identification number are listed. So we'll make that really easy for everyone that works for the city of New York. I think we answered a good amount, and I think that captured a lot of the questions. So I'm not sure if Katie or Amy, you saw any kind of have any closing thoughts or any last questions you saw, but I think this might be a good point to wrap up and kick it back to Anna.
One thing I want to mention that I saw a few times is defaulted loans. So defaulted loans are included in the announcement for debt relief that President Biden gave a few weeks ago. But if you are trying to seek PSLF with defaulted loans, you'll need to get those loans out of default before they could be eligible for PSLF. So that is a distinction there, but it is possible, right? Just wanted to mention that.
I've seen a lot in the chat as well as the Q&A. People say that they're applying for PSLF multiple times this year. I'm not really sure what they mean by that. Like if they mean that they're submitting the same information multiple times, and maybe they're doing that because they are concerned that they haven't gotten a response from the first form. As I said, it will take a minimum of 3 months minimum. And keep in mind that you and every single other person who has public service is applying for PSLF before October 31st. There are literally millions of people applying. So the fact that it's taking a little bit of a long time, or that the information is a little not great when it first gets out, I think is understandable. And so just hold off. I would say that there's no requirement to file multiple times as long as you've done, all of your work you certified all of your employment, and you just sort of have to wait through the process. If you're, most of you are getting every one of you actually are getting a new servicer for public service loan forgiveness. Everybody is going to eventually be moved to Mohella. And so that's all part of the thing. Maybe you need to create an account at Mohella to receive the letters that they're sending out. Maybe you need, some of those loans are taking a pit stop at AidVantage. It's very complicated. And so I'm not surprised that maybe some of you feel like you've had to apply multiple times this year, but it's not necessary. That's all I would say.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amy and Katie. You guys are really the experts, and we really appreciate you answering the questions. And just as a reminder for folks on the chat, I know we didn't answer every single question, but if you still have outstanding questions, we have listed in our resources how to make an appointment with a New York Financial Empowerment Center counselor. If you get lucky, maybe you can get Katie, but I know she's very booked up, so you might have to get to another one, where they're all great and all can help with PSLF. So thank you all again, and I'll kick it back to Anna.
All right, thank you, Ben and Katie and Amy. So yes, again, there are a lot of questions that unfortunately we don't have the time to get to for today. But again, we do encourage you to utilize the financial empowerment centers to speak with someone who can help you with your specific situations. And just a few things before we wrap up for today. One moment while I bring back the slides. All right, so we would just like to share some additional resources that may be helpful for you all as you are navigating this process. So of course, we encourage you to visit the Federal Student Aid website that will have all the latest and most up-to-date information about all of these developments. There's also a link to the PSLF Help Tool Guide. Again, we recognize that this process can be confusing and it might feel a little bit overwhelming for some, but we encourage you to, again, just utilize the Help Tool Guide, and that will really help you get through the process. We also have some additional information from DCWP, including some FAQs. And again, linked to the financial empowerment centers. You can call 311 or you can make your appointment online. Secondly, on this page, we have some additional resources here. You can visit the White House PSLF page to read up a little bit more on some of these changes. We encourage you to visit the EdCap website. They have a lot of great information for New Yorkers with student loans and debt. And of course, for any account-specific inquiries, we encourage you to visit the MOHELA website or My FedLoan. And additional resources include the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson Group, and of course, the Department of Financial Services to file a complaint. And before we wrap up, I would like to share some upcoming events that we have. On September 23rd, we have a monkeypox and COVID-19 briefing for city workers. We'll have a lot of great information, up-to-date information about COVID and monkeypox. For those of you who might have questions, they will be answered by the experts, Dr. Julia Watkins and Dr. Marcia Wong. We also have worksite flu clinics. We are fast approaching flu season, so encourage you all to get your flu shot to help prevent the spread of the flu. It'll help keep yourself, your loved ones, and your colleagues safe. And we encourage you to visit on.nyc.gov/WWNYC-flu to learn more. Additionally, we have for the month of October, we're encouraging you all to join WorkWell NYC in getting fit and participating in our various fitness classes. We are excited to announce that we have some limited time workshops. Here we have our schedule for October featuring classes for Latin dance, Bollywood, and bar. These are fun ways to participate in fitness and wellness at your work sites. You can also join online. And lastly, we do encourage you to stay in touch with WorkWell NYC. You can visit us online at nyc.gov/WorkWellNYC. You can also send us an email at workwell@olr.nyc.gov. Of course, we invite you to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can visit us on YouTube. We have recordings from our webinars all posted on YouTube and on Vimeo as well. And before we wrap up, I have launched a poll. So again, we are always aiming to improve our programs and services to better meet all of your needs. And so for our poll, how would you rate the overall quality of this webinar? This poll is anonymous, so we encourage you to share your opinion. The options are excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. So I'll just leave the poll up for a moment for those of you to respond. All right, so thank you very much for participating in the poll. I'd just like to turn it back over to our panelists if you guys have any closing thoughts before we wrap up.
None here. Thank you all for attending.
All right. Well, with that, again, just want to say huge thank you to our partners at DCWP. Thank you, Haiti, Ben, Deneen, and of course, thank you to our experts for today, Amy and Katie. We really appreciate all the input and great knowledge that you've shared with us. And of course, thank you to the WorkWell NYC team behind the scenes. Again, we do encourage you all to utilize the resources shared, and all of the slides and the recording will be shared with you all afterwards. So thank you all very much for joining us, and hope you all have a great afternoon.